So what are job stages and tasks? So this is a very common interview question. So this is more of a theoretical one where the interviews is basically checking or testing your understanding of the Hadoop system. So let's understand what jobs are, what stages are, and what tasks are. So at a very high level, a job is at the highest level of work in Hadoop. It basically represents a complete program that consists of MapReduce application. So let's understand this. Let's break this down. Now, when you write a MapReduce application or a Spark application, so basically you will have a user here. So you would have a user, right? So this user or the developer will write some application. Now this application will the code that he writes, this application will run on the data nodes, right? On the data nodes in Hadoop, and then obviously there is something called as map phase that goes, and then there is a reduce phase, and then finally you have the output, right? So this is basically the process. Obviously, there is shuffling and other stuff that happens, but this is all the things that gets executed when you run this application. So basically, you can say Spark Submit, right? So when you do a Spark Submit, basically these are all the things that gets executed, right? So this entire thing, right, is called as a job. So when you run a Spark Submit, it actually creates a Spark job and then it executes all these things. It executes a map phase, reduce phase, and then finally it provides you the output. So this is basically a job. So when somebody is saying that they're triggering a job, they're basically doing the Spark Submit, right? Now this is at the highest level. Now, within the job, there's something called as a stage, right? What is a stage? A stage is basically a logical phase of the job's execution. So this is basically a logical phase. Like you have something called as map phase, you have something called as reduce phase, right? So these are called as stages. Like this is a map stage, this is a reduce stage. So you have a job and then you have stage. Within this you have a map stage. The in that map stage what happens, right? Yeah, the mappers gets executed, and then in the reduce phase you'll have the reduce or the aggregation that gets executed. So it's just the logical separation, that is what is called as stage. So you have a job. Within the job you have stages. One is your map stage, one is your reduce stage, right? So you have this. Now, finally, what happens is like you have something called as task. So task is basically the smallest unit of work. So within the map phase or the reduce phase, there is some process that happens, right? Based on the use case, correct? So for example, if you are running an application where you're counting the number of words. So within the map phase, right? You will have to basically kind of split the data across, generate the key value pairs. So that is the some work that is happening at the reduce phase. You kind of aggregate those count, right? So now, who is responsible for carrying out all this task? That is basically the work of it. That is basically is what is called as a task. So that small piece of work is what we call as task. So again, you have job, then you have stages, and then you have task, which does the actual work. So this is basically the overall structure. So job is at the highest level. Then the job contains stages, which is basically you have map stage and reduce phase, and then you need tasks, right? So this again contains tasks which actually carries the actual process. So this is basically what job stages and tasks are.